Hello everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at duration. Now, duration does build on the last couple of lessons, dates and times, so if you haven't watched that, definitely recommend doing that. In the first video, dates, we ultimately looked at how 1 is stored as a date, and that's going to be the first date in Google Sheets calendar, which will be December 31st, 1899. We then looked at how the 1 afterwards would show how much of the day is completed. So hours would be 1/24th. I think that's, what is that? 1 divided by 2024, 0.04166666, so on to 7, that sort of thing. So if you put a fraction there, like 0.5, that's going to be half of a day. And so that's going to be 12 p.m. of that date, which then would be stored as 12/31/1899 at 12 p.m. So as you start to use that, you'll have these numbers like a start date and an end date, and you want to know the duration. So looking at these as numbers, you can see that it's going to be a number stored like 45,499.38, 45,501.3. And so as you go through this, I'm just going to do Control Z until it goes back. If you're trying to find the duration, you can actually use that end date minus that first one. And the duration is going to be 1.93, and that would be in days. If you want to actually view it as what we would show, as humans, and one that's easier to understand, you can actually use the duration. And it's the largest amount is actually going to be that hours. So it's going to show the hours, minutes, and seconds. So if you have a very large one that you would want to indate days, while it is possible using what we've known in the past, it does take a little bit of time. I did actually make a formula that will show you how many days there are and then go from there to show the rest of the time. But it doesn't do that as it would normally. Now, before I show that, which is just hidden sheets right here, I want to make sure that we understand that it is very important that you understand how minutes and hours and all of those are actually stored as decimals within there. You shouldn't have something like this in your sheets, like, oh, so-and-so had 50 minutes and then another 30 minutes. So what's the duration of their stay? While you and I, as humans, can look at these numbers and say, oh, well, that's easy. That's going to be 80 minutes. If you just take these ones and you add them and then you change it to duration, you're going to have 1,920 hours. And that is way off of what these minutes would be. Now, if it is easier to input, which honestly it would be easier to input as minutes instead of finding, okay, well, it's going to be 50 minutes and then you have to divide it by 24 and then divide it by 60. It's easier to do that one time instead of multiple times or in your head. I would not be able to do all that math in my head quickly. I think I'd be able to divide by 24 and 60, but it would take quite a bit. You can use formulas for it. So again, if you're wanting this to be in these minute durations, you just have to make sure that you have these, and then you want whatever that equals to be divided by 24 for hours, and then you have to divide it by 60 for minutes. And when you do that, it's going to show the duration, 1 hour and 20 minutes. Now that is correct. And again, it takes just the knowledge of how spreadsheets are operated to figure out how to do that. Again, like I said, this makes more sense as a human to input it in minutes, but then finding the right formula in order to get it to actually show what you're trying to show is another thing. So it's fairly simple to do this. And let's say you have other numbers, that was a little larger than I wanted, but it's okay, 23, 320, and so on. You could take this formula and just pull it down, and it'll show how much each one of these would be. So again, it is useful to know, and you could do this. It's just don't expect it without any sort of functions to do it that way. So I'm just going to remove this color because now we figured this out with the duration and dividing to whatever we need it to be. Let's take a look at this. So as I mentioned, perhaps you do want to show the days and then you want to show the hours. Because here you can tell there's going to be, it's really close to 2 days, but it's still a few hours behind. So there, you could take 24 from this one time. And so if you wanted to show how many days there are first, and then show the duration that's under a day, you can do something like this. Now, again, I put these up here just to show. If you take this and subtract 24, you would get that 22, and you can see the rest is the same. So you can see that these equal this one here. So first off, we have the days, and that's going to show how many days are between these two dates. So regardless of the time, this is 2 days. And technically, it's a little less than 2 days. But again, that's what this is doing. It's just looking at this first part, 26 and 28. Subtract, that's 2. So then I have this if statement. Time value actually shows what the value of that is, of the fraction that it represents, because again, time is stored 1 equals 1 full day. And so what this time value of this shows is that fraction. So if that time value fraction of B3, the end date, is larger than this other one, then you need to subtract a day, because this is actually going to mean these hours are actually after or larger. It's going to be 1 less day. Even though it says this is 2 days apart, which is true between these numbers, it is not true, because if you add 2 days to this 9, this would be 9 here, and that can't happen. And so as you do that, if that is the case, it subtracts 1 more. If that's false and it's actually larger, then it's not going to do anything. So let's say that this gets changed to 9, which then will be a little bit after. It's going to be 2 days. So hopefully that portion of it makes sense. Then here, what this is doing is it's taking the days that these are minus how many days that are here, plus whatever is left over. So that really means, this day plus this day are going to be subtracted by these full ones. So the days are going to get removed. Then it's going to either add +1 if it's larger, or subtract +1. So it's similar to this one, this component here, just to look at which one is larger, because we need to add another to it if it's smaller, or leave it the same if you can truly subtract it. Again, it's really, if you understand that component here, it is the same. You need to add another, because you're trying to combine and just leave these hours plus whatever else is needed. That one's a lot. Again, if you don't need this part, I probably should have said it at the start. Ignore it, because that is a little more advanced, but I figured some people might prefer that, whereas this one here, it's there. You can just leave it here, but again, if you're having like larger days and stuff, this could be more helpful to say like, okay, there's 56 days and then this many hours, because that's going to be easier than just a giant duration with hours. So hopefully most of this makes sense. Again, this part here is a little more advanced. I just wanted to share it in case. You can just kind of copy this over and then just make sure that your end date is where it says C3, and then your start date is where it says B3, and you will be good to go as long as you also do the same thing here. Hopefully you find this all helpful. In the next video, we're actually going to go through the functions. And I did show you a few like days, time value, so on. But we're going to actually take a look at some and how I've used it when I've gotten date data. And we'll also use a little bit of date data to work on functions to be able to perform calculations on a data set that has those different things. See you in the next one. Bye now.